Hi, everyone. Welcome to this AI Monetization Podcast. I'm Binny, the co founder of Project Pro. On this podcast, we speak with analytics, AI, and data engineering leaders on what kind of business outcomes they are seeing inside their companies with the latest AI technologies. Today, we are honored to have with us Ashish Gupta. Ashish has over 20 years of experience as a senior leader in both IT, data management, and data analytics. He's currently the head of data analytics and regional IT leader Americas for Revvity. Revvity is a $3+ billion revenue, 11,000 plus employee company that focuses in areas like medical imaging, prediction, screening, direction, diagnosis, informatics, etc. Before that, Ashish was head of data and analytics at Perkin-Elmer. Perkin-Elmer is a leader in lab technologies in areas like food, medicine, etc. And before that, Ashish spent almost 10 years at GE Digital, leading as a director of their data and analytics team. Ashish, thanks for taking time to do this. Welcome to this podcast.
Thank you, Vinny. Thank you for having me here. Very excited to speak to you on the subjects that I've been working on. So yes, so I work for Revvity now. I used to work for Perkin-Elmer, but Perkin-Elmer itself, of course, the company has been now we sold a part of the company
Mhm,
Perkin-Elmer to New Modern Capital.
mhm.
So what we are now is into diagnostics and life sciences primarily, and the remaining company is called Revvity now.
Okay,
So
understood.
yeah,
Okay,
so
so
that's
it's
the
okay.
base company. Of course, now it's called Revvity.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. So it's an extension of the same.
Exactly.
Okay, awesome. Okay. So Ashish, the first thing we were curious about is, in your role, you spend a lot of time talking with the business teams, understanding business problems, giving them analytic solutions, right? How do you think of the term data literacy? In practice, what does that mean to you? Is that a problem today? What should we all be doing more of in data literacy?
And I believe when you talk about literacy, you mean more from a business perspective, right? The business users perspective. How do they
Yeah,
use data? How literate they are about data? How accessible data is to them? And how well can they use data to make decisions?
exactly, exactly. That's exactly
Right.
what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Benny, I think that's one of the problems that most of the companies struggle with.
Mm,
While we, of course, work continues to work towards finding solutions to it, making sure that the users have access to data,
mm,
but it is not a simple problem to solve. There are multiple components to it. So one is that, if we start from very basic, so if for a business user, let's say someone who's sitting in a remote place, he's a sales guy. Does he has access to all the data that he or she requires? So level one is that what's the level of accessibility of data that the
mm,
person requires, whether he or she has a root right tool sets to acquire the data, to access the data or not. So that's number one. Number two, even if the person has access to data, do they have that capability to draw insights from that data?
mhm,
And I'm going to just stress a little more on this. I have been with this organization for the last 4 years. The constant feedback that I've received from my business partners, the CXO level employees that we work with, the executives that we work with, is that hey, for our organization, you are creating so many dashboards, so many reports. They're full of data, but then what do we do with this data? My team gets overwhelmed when they look at this data. Can you give us insights which are more actionable, or maybe some hyper personalized insights which are suitable to a particular sales rep? He or she can take those insights and take actions against it. So
mm,
that's number two.
mhm,
Number three problem, even if you solve one and two, is how accurate is your data,
mhm.
right? I mean, if you, of course, the commonly known term garbage in, garbage out, you throw in garbage into your analytical system, garbage comes out, you share the garbage with your users.
Yeah,
They do not want to use your insights anymore because they know it doesn't work. So you
right.
have to solve this problem at these three levels. One is
Mhm,
making data accessible to users.
mhm.
Second is making sure that they understand data, they can draw insights out of that data. And third is accuracy of data.
Yeah. That makes sense, Ashish. Just double clicking on the insight part of what you said, right? That sounds
Mhm,
very critical, right? We are all
mhm.
flooded with information and data. Do you have any thoughts on some ways to solve that problem or concern? On are insights usually embedded in some other tool we are using, or do they go somewhere else with the insights? How, like, some thoughts on how do you do that?
See, I think for insights, what a business,
Mm,
and I'm again going to talk about very contextually with respect to what we are doing today, what my
yeah,
business users do today. They
yeah,
rely very heavily on Excel sheets. They rely very heavily on what do data do they say see,
mm,
and many times they are not aware of the source of that data. Where is that data coming from? Someone has shared that data, create that data connection. No one knows where that data is coming in. So of course, so goes back to the first problems, whether you have the right source of data or not. But then coming to your question
mm,
about insights, I think most of that work is manual today.
mm,
Most of the work is based on what do they see, the
mm,
descriptive analytics, how is the sales going, but do they
mm,
really have those insights now? What is the next step that they need to do? I don't think
mm,
that we are yet there. Um,
mm,
are we focusing towards that? Yes. So of course,
mm,
we're working on multiple things. One of the things is that uh, so we are introducing a natural language based query mechanism. So example, see, giving you a very simple example. Uh, we have these sales dashboards. We have various dashboards. Now we cannot expect our so I mean I'm just going to talk about the executive persona for now. I cannot expect my CEO to go in and apply those filters to understand, how this dashboard works, how will he will be able to see the right data for the right region, the most profitable product line, for example.
yeah,
Can we build a system wherein he says, hey, for the month of November, give me
mm,
my most profitable product line and the region.
mm,
And boom, on a click of button, not even a click of a button, just the moment he says that, he gets
yeah,
that dashboard, he gets that insight into that
mm,
data. This
yeah,
is what we are aspiring towards. And of course, we're using LLMs to build that solution today. It's work in progress.
mm,
Many of the tools available today, Power BI, Copilot, to a
yeah,
certain extent, do provide that.
mm,
But do we have that flexibility where the voice is integrated? So some of those solutions do not exist, some things that we are building. And I'm pretty
mm,
certain there are solutions which exist in the market as well.
mm,
We may not have that bandwidth to go out to
yeah,
look to every tool, get every new tool that comes into the market, into our environment. But
yeah,
of course, some things have to be built, something has to be procured.
yeah, makes sense. And in the spectrum of solutions available to solve analytics and self-serve analytics for business teams, right? Uh, I was about to ask you what role is AI and GenAI beginning to play. You talked about English to NLP kind of translation,
Mhm.
but what
Mhm.
other use cases are you excited about with GenAI playing with business analytics?
One big step that we are taking towards is that
Mm,
we are replatforming our entire data analytics portfolio. So we
mm,
are moving from a traditional tech stack. In fact, we were a little late in the game. We still use some legacy technologies, uh, Oracle, SAP BW, etc. Now, but we just, of course, want to get into a modernization plan. We just want to make sure that we utilize AI at scale. So what we are excited toward for is that the new platform that we've chosen is mostly going to be running on Databricks, on ADLS, on Azure platform. The capabilities that we have seen so far in terms of the business glossary that the AI components can generate. I mean, see, one of the problems is that data discovery. So for a user to understand where to draw insights, they need to understand the data as well, right? Where they're sourcing the data. So the AI capability to generate business glossary on its own. And in fact, the demonstrations were very encouraging. Very exciting. We
yeah.
are yet in the journey, so
Mm,
we that's something that we are really looking forward to have the right business glossary in place where the users can generate their own self-service capabilities, self-service analytics,
mm,
insights I've talked about. Of course, that's one of those areas. We are exploring other areas. In fact, so we do run some programs.
mm,
I'll just give you some examples,
yeah.
and these may not necessarily to do with analytics, but then these are more actions that we take using Gen AI. So, for example, of course, we are a $3 billion organization. We have a long tail of receivables. Some things which are, let's say, less than $10,000.
Mm,
Uh, now for our recovery team, it's very difficult for them to reach out to all customers, having those small payables, $100, $1,000, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So we have recently, ventured with some partners. We have just gotten some partners to build AI programs wherein we can identify these receivables,
Mm-hmm.
uh, build emails, and of course, these
Mm-hmm.
are not custom. These are not those template-based emails with a
Mm-hmm.
specific language. So we build those emails, write those, send those emails out. Of course, the tone changes based on the previous reply, based
Mm-hmm.
on the history of that receivable.
Mm-hmm.
When we get the reply back, we
Mm-hmm.
categorize those replies in the right bucket. There are 25 different categories. For example, customer is willing to pay, not willing to pay, it's a dispute transaction, or some customer case has to take some action. So
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, so we categorize it. So there's some of the use cases that we use for now,
Mm-hmm.
which may not be directly to do with analytics from data, but of course the actions that we require based on data.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. So that sounds like a solid use case that's inside the business workflow,
Yeah.
immediately impacts P&L, all that. Okay. So, Ashish, when you pick use cases like that, right? I mean, do you have tips or best practices on how do you make sure most of these POCs that you build eventually make it to deployment and production and don't get stuck on POC stage to increase the probability of POC going to production?
Yeah. So we are not yet in a state where we have this as a big problem, and I'll tell
Okay.
you why. Now
Hmm.
we do not have a huge analytics team, a huge AI team. We work with
Hmm.
a very lean team.
Hmm.
Unlike my other organizations that I've worked for, where of course we had huge teams. Here the team
Hmm.
is very very lean, and of course most
Hmm.
of our work, of course, is defined in house, but then
Hmm.
executed through a partner. And then there
Hmm.
are a bunch of partners that we have, who are willing to run POCs for us,
Hmm.
uh, many times free of cost. And
Hmm.
then we identify the outcome and then deploy those into production. So I mean, I would say our hit rate has been pretty high,
Hmm.
close to 50, 60%, 70%.
Wow.
Um,
Okay.
yeah,
Hmm.
we've done some internal POCs. The technology that we've chosen for our data platform, Databricks, we are doing some POCs, but of course, we have derived some meaningful outcomes. So
Yeah.
I don't see we are in a state wherein our hit rate is very low. Maybe one of the
Hmm.
reasons that we do not have too many POCs also. We
Hmm.
It's not that we have opened up the Pandora's box. We have multiple POCs happening at this time. No, so we are very focused on the use cases that we want to address.
Yeah.
Um, we we identify those use cases, we consult our partners, we identify what can be done to solve that problem, and then go after that problem.
Notice. Okay. Noted. And taking that use case of AR, accounts receivable
Mhm.
communication, right? So when you staff a team to solve a problem like this, either from internally or from your partners or what you see in the industry, right? Are you
Mhm.
seeing data scientists who just learn a little bit of prompting and the foundation models working on that, or are you also seeing full stack developers who learn all that and because there is some integrations involved into an email client? And so what kind of talent are you seeing beginning to work on these LLM AI projects these days?
Yeah, yeah. So to start with, it's those specialized AI engineers, the data
Hmm.
scientists who start solving a problem. We just do not go all the way building a problem and start integrating it with the larger systems. And to
Hmm.
give you an example, one of the use cases that we are solving is inventory optimization. So
Hmm.
we need to optimize our inventory across our various factories, our distribution centers, etc. Of course, that
Hmm.
helps with our working capital.
Yeah.
Um, so, so a larger solution will be like, so we have of these various ERPs, SAP, Dynamics, etc. A larger solution is that you build this model, it gets integrated with all these systems, and then you churn out the outcome, which goes back into your ERPs, your MRPs run based on that. Um, your material resource planning happens based on that, etc. Your SEO planning happens based on that. So we do not start with that entire integration. We start with a very focused use case. We of course extract data, run those POCs, build a deployable model, and that's when we start integrating. So it starts with those specialized data scientists, data engineers who understand the space, and that's when we go after everything else that's required, any integrations, any automation, etc.
Understood. Okay. And earlier in the conversation, you mentioned two things, which is business teams being flooded by dashboards and
Mhm.
emerging capabilities of natural language kind of analytics query. So, do you think this will just replace dashboards because it's more dynamic, on demand rather than pre-built dashboards, or is there a way they coexist? Where do you think we are headed?
Well, I think it's a long way to go before we can say that we have natural language based query engines throwing out
Hmm.
data at a at a very high accuracy levels.
Correct.
So I don't think we are yet there, or we will be there the next year or so. The
Hmm.
dashboards will continue.
Hmm.
Something's going to be as simple as that. Someone wants to see a report in their email box every morning. They do not want to struggle with connecting to a system, just calling out and just trying to identify the outcome. They want to see a certain report, a certain outcome in their email box every
Yeah.
morning. They want to see the data every day.
Yeah.
That will continue.
Yeah.
And a very simple example being that, just yesterday, some users from Europe pinged us saying that, hey,
Hmm.
my data is not showing accurate. My sales number, we have something called a backlog order sales and sales force report, wherein they can see how they're doing in the quarter, how is the quarter looking like, what are the opportunities looking like. They see that, they get the complete insight. And he was very worried that, the sales number are not showing accurately. He thinks the sales number should be pretty high as compared to
Okay.
what he has. Now, however voice capability we build in, right?
Hmm.
If the data is not accurate, it is not accurate. So they still rely more on those emails or those reports that they see on a daily basis. They understand, yes, there is a difference. Yesterday it was 150 million, today is 180 million.
Yeah.
As compared to a system wherein they throw out some language and return something.
Yeah.
So, one, it is not yet developed to that level. Number two,
Yeah.
um, unless you have something very visible in front of you, which you can compare,
Hmm.
where you can see the trend, you don't believe that data so much.
Right. Right. Makes sense. And the other thing is, the dashboards probably cover 80% of what people want on a daily basis, right? Do you think
Mhm.
there is a very large tail end of analytics queries people have that a dashboard doesn't really cover, or do you think a dashboard really gives them most of what they want?
That's a very interesting question, and I do think that that's something that we struggle with on a daily basis.
Okay.
Um, I don't think we cover even 30% of what the users want through dashboards.
Wow.
Um, and I'll give you a very simple example. You release a
Uh,
standard dashboards in
mm,
no time.
mm,
There'll be multiple versions of those dashboard created by the users. They would want to modify it as per their needs. They would want to modify. A very simple example. If we build a dashboard, we say we show YTD data. Someone
mm,
wants to see MTD data. Someone wants to see QTD data. A very simple example, right?
mm.
Now think about regions. Every region calculates a KPI differently.
Mm.
Every function in the business calculates a KPI differently. Where do we reach a consensus that this is a definition, this is how a KPI should be built and read and understood?
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to ever reach a point in time. I mean, that's a utopian state, right? Where we can see that
Mm.
everyone agrees with this KPI, everyone knows that this is how it's to be calculated. This solves everyone's purpose. No, finance does not need those calculations. They see that data in a very different way. And
Yeah.
even with the finance, the controllership, the FP&A, all these
Mm.
functions see that data in a very different way. So
Yeah.
they create and even with that function, different users see that data in very different ways. So they create those multiple versions. Many times, what also happens, Vinny, very interesting thing,
Mm.
people use these dashboards to download data. They download data, they build
And
their own
play it on.
repositories, build reports on top of that. They combine that data with something else, something else, something else, and it becomes a nightmare for IT to maintain those systems. Of course,
Right.
so the expectation is that there are today 10,000 reports which exist in the system, multiple versions, multiple reports that users have created. IT go and make sure that performance availability is met, the numbers
Mm.
are met. I think it's very, very difficult. It's a very difficult task. Do we have a solution today wherein we say that, hey, this is how we solve this problem? I don't think we are yet there. At least we
Yeah.
are not there. I don't know whether the industry solved this problem or not.
Mm.
We do take some measures to solve that, to reach there, but
Mm.
we are not yet there.
Got it. So you're saying this whole search for a single source of truth, that's like a moving target. It's very difficult to really achieve that goal, really, because everybody wants to do have their own versions.
Yeah,
Mm.
I would say it's a difficult thing to do.
Mm.
It's not very. I mean, so there are two levels to it. All right, so there are two levels of problem to be solved. One is the data source. Second is the analytics on top of it.
Mm,
And the problem lies in both the places,
mm,
right? Um, in fact, I wrote a paper. It should be on LinkedIn somewhere about the whether the analytics should be centralized or it should be federated, whether the data should be centralized or should be federated. Today, with data mesh coming up, there is a lot of focus on federating data as well. But somewhere, of course, it may work for very large organizations, but for an organization of our size, I don't think that that's going to work. Even with a centralized data team, we find it difficult. The example that I gave you, right? People download data in their local machines, they build new reports on top of it. How do we solve for that problem? Um, One is that, of course, I think data should be centrally managed. That's number one. Number two, um, we need to expose the data sets where we calculate KPIs to the larger audience. Of course, data privacy, data security is a concern that comes in over there. You have to kind of weigh the benefits of how much are you exposing to the users. But of course, if users lack access to data, the probability of they creating their own versions of data is very, very high.
mm,
Maintaining that source of truth is very high. So you have to somewhere balance it out. You have to make users data literate. How do you access data? Going back to the first point that I raised, right? Do
mhm,
users have access to data? One of the challenges that we have today, people say, hey, we want to build our own self-service analytics, we should be able to do all of this work, but we don't have access to data. IT does not give us access, which may not be true. In fact, there are restrictions that we put in. Of course, I cannot expose all the data of the world to everyone in the
yeah,
organization.
mhm,
So how do we balance it out?
yeah,
One of the approaches that we are going, moving ahead is that the medallion architecture, we are building a semantic layer wherein we will try to provide access to semantic layer to as many users as we can, and of course based on their roles, both from a business perspective, the region perspective, and the business that support.
mhm,
Um, Let them transform data. Let them bring in some low code tools to help
mhm,
them transform data. They should be able to discover data that exists today. I think
mhm,
one other big problem that we have is that our data is not discoverable. Only IT and just a few people in IT understand the data that sits in the warehouses.
mhm,
So we need to make our data more discoverable. We need to provide those tools and technologies to the users wherein they can start analyzing the data,
yeah,
transforming the data, and figure out valuable outcomes. And then what's a governance model around publishing those data sets? Now we cannot just let the world do whatever they want. Publish your own data sets. No. So the publishing is going to happen through a central team. We're
mhm,
just going to make sure that these are certified data sets. Someone from functional team certifies publish them
mhm,
for the wider world to use.
mhm,
So I think it's a very carefully balanced approach that we have to follow. You just cannot remove self-service uh, because of dashboards, data spawning all over the place. You cannot do that. You cannot allow them free flow access. So what's that hybrid approach? What's that governance model? That's something which has to be worked on very, very carefully.
okay, okay. So it's a very, very thorough, comprehensive walkthrough that you just gave. To enable this solution of certified data sets, governance model, and earlier in the conversation you spoke about Databricks and the business glossary they showed you. So is
Mhm.
the Unity catalog and Databricks, is that a big thing you're very, very excited about to solve this problem?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
Um, that's something which we are very, very keenly looking forward to.
Hmm.
In fact, yesterday we were having this conversation with some of the users, some of those power users, which should rely on data very, very heavily. Wherein when we talked about this, there was a lot of excitement across the organization about this. So that's
Okay.
something that we are very keenly looking forward to, not only from a data discovery perspective, but also from a lineage perspective. People need to understand
Right.
where is your data originating from.
Hmm.
And see, we are just not talking about a few systems, just an SAP system or a Salesforce system. We are talking about data coming from multiple sources, the companies that we acquired, so multiple ERPs, all that data getting consolidated together. So it's even
Yeah.
more important now to understand the lineage.
Right. Right. Makes sense. And as you go down implementing these solutions, solving some of these challenges, Ashish, what would you say are your top problems as an analytics leader? Yeah, that you wish
Uh,
somebody solved for you, or you wish a tool existed for it, things like that.
yeah. So multiple, I would say. So
Mm,
number one, data quality.
mm,
And I think that's a problem that everyone struggles with. I don't have worked with multiple organizations, multiple companies, multiple groups within an organization with GE as well. I don't think anyone's been able to solve that problem for. And there are multiple places where the data originates, right? The problem
mm,
problem kicks in. It can be the source systems, it can be the way you ingest data, it can be just the latency which creates a problem. The example that I was giving you yesterday, this user pinged me.
yeah.
The person was looking at data which was 3 days old, and we realized that our systems, the data did not get refreshed. So I think
Mhm,
data quality is a big problem that we face today on a
mhm,
day-to-day basis. We want to get those real-time insights, real-time analytics onto the business, onto the users,
yeah.
wherein they trust the quality of data 100%.
Right.
That's number one. Number two, what we just talked about, self-service analytics, data reports, data spawning all over the place, reports spawning all over the place. And with that, you ensure performance availability. You have users who will request access to direct data lakes, data warehouses, your consumption systems. Now, with all these queries running in the background, people accessing all your data sources, accessing reports, creating their own reports, your systems are overloaded,
Right.
right? Now, how do you ensure that performance and availability is met? How do you ensure you have a clean system? How do you ensure that users see the same data through the same KPIs, multiple reports coming out of multiple users from multiple users showing different data for the same KPIs? I think that's another big problem that we have to solve for.
Got it. Data quality, self-serve analytics, just access to the end data sources, governance around it.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Okay. And the other thing I was curious about is uh, you've both worked in companies where there are very large teams and lean teams currently, right? Do you have some best practices and guidance on how do you hire, inspire, manage, retain teams in a competitive environment like today?
Yeah. So I'll give you my perspective over a large team and a small team. Um,
Hmm.
yeah. So my perspective has changed drastically now. Of course, I have led teams wherein I had more than 140, 150 people reporting into directly
Hmm.
and indirectly into me,
Hmm.
along with a set of contractors. Now I have teams wherein much smaller, 25, 30, 40 people reporting,
Hmm.
um, maybe doing the same amount of work.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah. So,
Hmm.
and with the emerging technologies, it's going to become much easier. The teams are going to become much leaner. But I'll tell you, it's much easier to work with a leaner team as compared to a larger team, because with a larger team, there's a very high level of discontent within the team.
Hmm.
People are not happy. They look into each other. They see they come. There's a lot of comparison happening. Versus a small team where you know that only these set of people, they have a lot of ownership. They drive a lot of things. Of course, we augment teams with contract resources whenever required. But then there's a lot of sense of responsibility. There's a lot of sense of ownership as compared to a very large team.
Yeah.
So, I've seen instances where teams of one third the size have delivered the same amount of work or even more, and with very less dissatisfaction among the team members. So I'm a very big fan of smaller teams. I mean, of course, it was a cultural shock for me when I saw a very small team. How will they deliver this much? But then when we really got into the way the team worked, that was a lot of learning for me. But then how do we, so of course that's one natural way of retaining people, that give them more responsibility, give them more ownership. And
Yeah.
people like that sense of belonging, sense of ownership.
Hmm.
I mean, you bring in a person, don't give him her any ownership, flood the person with a lot of money. I don't think that's going to hold that person for a very long time,
Okay.
because people want that sense of belonging, sense of ownership. I think
Hmm.
that's one of the biggest driving factors that we have to retain people.
I see. And this is very interesting what you just said that a team of, 20% the size can do the same amount of work given the right processes and tools, right? Just digging a little deeper into that. When you say given the emerging technologies that enable them to do this, one is obviously the code generation kind of tools that you have. What
Yeah.
else is really helping this transition, you think, other than the code generation kind of tools?
Well, automated documentation. You really
Mm.
don't need to struggle with that documentation, what you used to do earlier. So
Yeah.
automated documentation, all the co-pilots that we have, right? All
Mm.
the not everyone needs to be on a single call.
Yeah.
You can have calls with a small set of people, generate summary and distribute to everyone.
Right.
Now, in large teams, you would want to have all those people sitting together, make sure that people understand. 50% people understand, 50% people don't understand. You don't run into those problems in smaller teams. You sit together, you talk about a problem, and people know how to solve that problem. You don't have 50 other people to dissipate the same knowledge to. Uh, Plus, change management becomes much easier with smaller teams. In
Mhm.
larger teams, change management is a very big problem, right? People doing working in their own silos, they create their own teams. I mean, imagine a large party, right? You go to a large party when there are 100 people, people will form small groups.
Yeah.
They'll sit on those round tables, small groups, they'll chat among themselves, they'll not interact with each other.
Right.
Compare it to a smaller party, 10, 15 people, chances are very, very high that they'll talk to each other,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's one very big difference between a small team and a large team.
Mm.
Now, there will be times that you'll require a large team to solve a problem, and I think you'll have to probably use those principles that you use with smaller teams into large teams as well.
Got it. Got it. Well said. And for somebody who is starting off on his or her career and wants to be part of these high-performing small analytics teams, what career guidance do you have for somebody like that to join and to scale their career in teams like this?
Yeah, well, if your focus is to be a technology based leader, let's say an analytics leader, and if you're starting a journey, just don't be in a hurry to be a manager. I think one of the biggest uh, thing that people fancy in India is that they want to become leads, managers, so that people work for them and they get that pride, right? That I'm the
Yeah.
boss. Well, of course, it's important in the career journey. I've seen managerial positions grow much faster as compared to ICs. But then, initial years, you learn about technology, be hands on technology, learn everything. PLSQL, it's not going away. I mean, people talk about all the new things today, but then learn those basics. PLSQL, be hands-on. Python, be hands-on. PySpark, you learn, but then the basics you have to learn. Uh, Learn the business. I
Mhm.
mean, if you don't learn the business, you cannot be an analytics leader. You cannot lead growing analytics area. You need to speak the language of the business. The biggest disconnect between IT and business is that you speak technical, they speak business. It does not match. And many times, 90% of the times, business people do not have the inclination to learn technical. While there are people who do that, it's not an exception. But then 80-90% times they will not. They know what they want from in their business. They'll not speak the technical language, so it will not match. It will not merge. Being a technical person, being an analytics leader, you need to understand the business. You need to speak business language, and then you can translate it to a technical language yourself. I think these are some of these areas that you need to focus on. But I think if you want to grow in your organization, if you are probably in your mid career, go out and network. I think there is no replacement of network. While you have all the skills at senior
Uh-huh.
levels, what you require is network. How well
Mhm.
can you connect with people?
Mhm.
How well you can sell your ideas to people.
Mhm.
I think that's the key. And there's no right time to start a network. You might be just into a job. Right then, start building your networks. Go out, reach out to people, ask for more responsibility, ask for more work. People like it. If someone comes to me today, ask for more responsibility, and he or she shows that drive to deliver. I mean, I perceive that person to be a great person. I mean, I
Yeah.
would want that person for my next role,
Mhm.
as compared to someone who's very shy, wants to do but does not approach. So I think
Mhm.
that's a barrier you need to break in your mind. You just need to go and reach out to leaders. They like it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a solid advice that is. And just one follow-up question is you spoke about how it's important to network because you need to communicate your ideas, and that's really important, right? So when you are communicating in your role, trying to build a business case around an analytic solution, what are some best practices on how you bridge the gap between technical details and the business outcomes in some of these conversations, story tell? What are some tips around that?
Yeah. I mean, see, if you have to sell your business case, you go any level technical, I don't think anyone's going to approve that. Till the time business sees a business value in what you're doing, uh, no one is going to approve. And these are expensive solutions, by the way, right? When you build a new platform, it's expensive. It's not that you put in, $50,000 and it's built. You're talking about millions,
Mhm,
and you have to really speak business language. You have to show that business growth. You have to show what exactly the business benefit will be
mhm,
when you build a solution, when you build an outcome. So I think unless you understand the business, it's not going to happen. And you speak at multiple levels, right? I mean, of course, for me, for my approvals come from my CFO. When we talk about multi-million dollar investments, it comes from the CFO. And the first thing is that, hey, with what we already have, we are able to fulfill our needs. Rather, would want to invest somewhere where we can grow our revenue.
mhm.
Now, what answer do you have, right? The re-platform exercise that I talked about,
Yeah,
the biggest question I faced was that, you know, we still have solutions, right? Our solutions still work. I
well,
mean, what happens if you get us real-time data instead of non-real time, a batch load which gives me an outcome 6 hours later or a day later? I'm okay with that. I'm okay to live with it. I'd rather
mhm,
invest $3 million somewhere else, which will help me increase my revenue. So you
mhm,
have to translate that into a business outcome, business benefit. And see, one
mhm.
of the problems I'll tell you these days, what's happening is that
Yeah,
uh, it is very difficult to sell your ideas today to the leadership today, because what's happening is with all these SaaS offerings,
mhm,
all these companies reach out to CFOs, CMOs directly. They don't even come to IT,
mhm,
right? And they say that,
mhm,
hey, you start using this tool,
mhm,
$50,000, $80,000, and you have a solution. And they say, oh wow, it's pretty simple. Why do I need to go to IT where they ask for $1 million to build such solution and build all these integrations? In their head, you just bring a new vendor, get things done, and it's easy. So it becomes even more important than did you understand business. You show the business value. Otherwise, you're not getting those approvals, you're not getting those investments.
right. No, that's very, very well said. And that goes into the earlier thing you talked about, building versus buying or partnering kind of decisions that you make. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, this has been great, Ashish. Some fantastic advice here in terms of how do you solve data quality problems, career guidance, build versus buy, all of that. Thank you so much for taking time to do this. It's been very helpful.
Okay, it was lovely talking to you. Thank you for having me here.